Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us again today. This is Mary Kate Soliva here with you at Veteran Voices. I am your host, and I'm so glad that you're joining us today because we have a really great interview teed up with an incredible veteran who's given back so much already while on active duty and off active duty. Just a quick programming note before we get started. This program is part of the incredible Supply Chain Now family of programming. And today's show is conducted in partnership with the Guam Human Rights Initiative and Military Women's Collective. Military Women's Collective is doing incredible things out in California and nationwide for our women veterans everywhere. You can find out more at militarywomenscollective.org. And for the Guam Human Rights Initiative, find out more about them and the great work they're doing at guamhri.org. And you can learn more about and tune in to Veteran Voices wherever you get your podcasts. So, okay, without further ado, I'm super excited to introduce you to a Marine Corps veteran. Our guest today served 27 years in the United States Marine Corps. I was just saying to him earlier that not too many make that and achieve that feat. So I think that's fantastic. And I'm just really excited to introduce you to him because he just retired recently, but not just that, he's continuing to serve beyond the uniform. And that is why I'm so glad he's joining us here on Veteran Voices. Brian Russel, thank you so much for joining us, Brian.
Mary Kate, thanks for having me on. It is an absolute pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, absolutely. I know the Marines are very, once a Marine, always a Marine. So, I said retired, I'm not going to use past tense, but I'm super excited about having you pump us up with some motivation, no matter what day of the week that our listeners are tuning in. Wanted to hear from you a favorite motivational quote, saying, song. You can sing those if you want, but I'm ready. I think our listeners are ready too.
Okay, I've actually got two
Great.
sayings, I guess you can say, two things that have been on my mind. You mentioned about continuing to give back, and I've been toying around with this idea of starting a couple of Substack channels, Substack, an independent writers platform. I enjoy writing and think I want to get some of my thoughts down. One, about just my experiences, 27 years in the Marine Corps. It's been a bit of learning, as you can imagine, over those 27 years. And so the title of this Substack, but kind of the saying that motivates me throughout the day, throughout my career, but even today now, are the three key questions any officer asks himself or herself throughout the day. They are, what do I know? Who should know what I know? And have I told them? It gets back to that Marine Corps bias for action, trying to make decisions, trying to outcycle an adversary. Like, information is pretty important. And so whenever you receive new information, it usually prompts some type of action. And that action is typically sharing that with someone else who needs to know that information. So just this idea of, I know some things, don't mind sharing those things. So maybe I ought to write those down and share those. So again, what do I know? Who should know what I know? And have I told them? It's just something I ask myself throughout the day, and that includes my wife, Mary Kate,
Don't forget your wife.
This thing happened around the house today. Now, yeah, and you can imagine I'm around the house a little bit more, being retired. Maybe I should tell Kathy what is going on. So that's one. And then the other relates to a passion of mine, and I know we'll talk more about that in the podcast, is mountain biking. I've been mountain biking for almost all those 27 years, just really as a sport has done a world of good for me. But the phrase I always remind myself before a ride, or maybe even in the midst of a ride, is keep the rubber side down. You can imagine if you see the rubber, your tires up above you, things are getting pretty exciting. Probably not for good exciting. So yeah, just keep the rubber side down is another thing I'm thinking about writing about, how we approach the sport of mountain biking and keeping everyone safe out there, but having fun too. Keeping the rubber side down keeps things kind of on track. Yes, pun intended.
Yes, I love the puns. Keep them coming. And one of the things I'm glad you mentioned both of those sayings because I actually had not heard them and we haven't had any other guests mention them. So I think that's like where rubber meets the road and you just keep going. And as you alluded to, you're doing incredible work with the North Carolina Interscholastic Cycling League. And we talk about it, you call it, is it Nakickle?
I usually introduce myself as the new director of the North Carolina Mountain Bike League, but yes, North Carolina Interscholastic Cycling League is a lot to say. But because I grew up in the Marine Corps and everything turns into an acronym, when you write down that acronym, NCICL is what
Nikikel. Well,
what it's yeah.
I'm trying to think of like, yes, it can be a mouthful, but it's just incredible work that you're doing. I know we're going to talk about it later in the episode, but for our listeners, new director here, Brian's spearheading the initiative on the North Carolina Interscholastic Cycling League, and just excited to listen more. So stay tuned there. And just wanted to know, I did mention 27 years of service in the U.S. Marine Corps, and I was like, we're not going to go way, way back, but we're going to kind of go way back to talk about your upbringing. And if you could tell our listeners a little bit about where you grew up. Just, I just love taking this back of veterans. I feel like we learned so much about where we came from before we decided to serve our country.
Yeah, grew up in I'll call it Northern Virginia. My parents moved around a couple towns up there, Springfield, Burke, Fairfax, but generally stayed in the area. Neither of my parents were in the military,
Oh,
but a
wow.
lot of military personnel, a lot of my friends, their father or mother was in the military, just being close to the nation's capital and the Pentagon, as you can imagine. So
Mhm.
understood kind of what the military lifestyle was about from their perspective, because they would leave in 2 or 3 years, right? On a
Yes.
set of orders. But really, what inclined me to military service was my grandfather, Jim Hamilton, a World War II veteran. He flew torpedo bombers for the United States Navy in the South Pacific during World War II, and he was just an admirable man. Just was of that greatest generation that we talk about a lot. And just, man, if I could grow up to be like Jim Hamilton, that would be awesome. And I thought his military service was probably a piece of that. Sacrifice and working with others and giving back to the nation. That was something that was very attractive to me, and I wanted to do. Wanted to serve the nation, and just part of that growing up. I'll mention an organization, the Naval Sea Cadet Corps. So
Hmm.
I put my toe in the water for this military service thing. There I am, age of 14. I'm in Orlando, Mary Kate, when the Navy still ran a boot camp down there. So your first kind of summer tour as a Sea Cadet is going to Navy boot camp for 2 weeks. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I
How
doing?
rough. How
It
rough.
was interesting. It was eye opening for this young man. But what I appreciated was the structure and the leadership and the camaraderie, and that just signed me up. So going off to college, got a scholarship for the Naval Reserve Officer Training Corps at North Carolina State University, and was initially a Navy option midshipman. But then I started having conversations with my future father-in-law. So Kathy and I, my wife, we met in high school,
Oh, you
and
did? Oh gosh, I want to dig deeper in that story.
yeah, well, I'm about
That's
to tell a
great.
little bit of it. So yeah, we met her in Northern Virginia again. Father assigned, headquarters Marine Corps, and so we met in high school. We decided to
Oh,
go to school
sweet.
in North Carolina together. So I went to, I jokingly say, the premier academic institution, North Carolina State University. Kathy went to Chapel Hill, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So I married a Tar Heel, and there's a whole, house divided aspect of our relationship, but really it's not a big deal. But anyway, so yeah, Kathy's dad was serving as a
Huge
colonel in the Marine
influence.
Corps. As I'm in school, and I joke about it with Kathy and say, I just want to make sure I was guaranteed I could marry her, so I decided to join the Marine Corps. But it was really
One
what
way to
Bob
put
shared.
yourself.
Yeah, there's some truth to that. Like, take no chances. Kathy's dad's a Marine. Maybe I should join the Marine Corps. But really, what Bob shared with me about the Marine Corps' approach to taking care of its people, it is about both the people and the mission. The emphasis on leadership, the emphasis on those type of things, more than I was seeing out of the Navy side of things, just became really attractive to me. So put in my application to change Marine option, and there I was in December 1995, getting commissioned as a second lieutenant, United States Marine Corps.
I love that. With just the legacy there, even though your parents didn't serve, but you talk about Grandpa Hamilton there, and part of the greatest generation. I actually think that, well, this morning I was positive that I ran into a World War II veteran from that I had seen in Reading, Pennsylvania's largest World War II air show. And just every time I see someone from the Grace generation, I'm just like, wow, just, want to talk to them and hear what I can about from them. Um, and then, of course, being from Guam, I was like, when you mentioned the Pacific, I was like, yes. But even more so, the fact that you had to put yourself through Marine Corps training for the sake of your future father-in-law. I'm just imagining you as a young man doing that. But gosh, Kathy sure scooped up a good one that you're willing to go and through all of that, because we know probably out of all the branches, I don't know, they say arguably Marine Corps is probably one of the toughest trainings coming in straight with and it's so especially for those enlisted with their feet on the yellow footprints. So if you could tell just real quick, I'm just really curious about what that was like, high school with young Brian and young Kathy. Did you all meet in like a English class or something?
I think it was a math class, actually. We were in class together, and then we both went out for the track team at school. And so started doing some workouts together, long runs, very romantic Mary Kate around the lake, long run or whatever.
Gosh.
Yeah, and we clicked, and we kind of knew right then that we just would work out together. And while we're on the topic of Kathy, and you mentioned training, she's obviously worth anything I ever went through. She is, in fact, the love of my life. But
Mhm.
I was trained to do what I was, brought in to do in the Marine Corps. I was always given training to do it. Kathy, not so much. Marine Corps spouse.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of on the job training and managing me being away. So Kathy probably had the toughest piece of those 27 years in terms of just keeping this
Absolutely.
household together, and she deserves a lot of credit for keeping the family together. And yeah, I'm just very blessed that she is still with me after all those 27 years. But I wouldn't have done it any other way without her right by my side.
No, and I love that. Gosh, I even have goosebumps. I don't know about our listeners, but I think it's just a true testament. Even though you mentioned Tar Heels and House Divided, just the strength there of the love from Kathy and holding the ground. When they say behind every great man, just a strong partner and spouse. With you the whole step of the way, 27 years, but even more so if you count those romantic runs around the lake in high
Sure.
school. And so I don't know why I'm like all of a sudden envisioning like musical Grease here. Thinking of it. But I just think that's fantastic. And one of the lessons learned, like you mentioned, Bob, in with regards to your father-in-law, would you say that there were any kind of lessons learned or words of wisdom that he shared with you before you embarked on this journey in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, there certainly were. But I think let's get back to family here. So my mother-in-law, Marty List, and my father-in-law is Bob List. They were there for us throughout that entire 27 years. One, because I think they knew they walked that same type of journey, and it's pretty tough. And so
Right.
there were a lot of Bob and Marty visits to the Russell family while I was away to help out with things, watching the dogs in between PCS moves, those type of things. Is just, I think they knew, and they absolutely helped us throughout that entire 27 years. So more than words of wisdom, action, loving us through, helping when we needed a lot of help to get through some of those tough times.
And I think that also with that Bob was able to understand that coming from a place where he was a Marine Corps colonel, and just understanding where you were coming from at every phase as you went up the ranks. So I think it's just a true testament of just how you were able to be so successful right throughout your career, just having that strong bond with your family and so much support. So I absolutely love that. And definitely when as we go on through the episode later on and touch more on that advice and lesson learned, I would love to hear your thoughts too on keeping the family ties strong. And I know that's not a success story for every veteran out there, but I do think it's important to touch on, especially for those who are transitioning. But wanted to get into your military service here with the Marine Corps, and wanted to hear about perhaps a favorite place that you were ever stationed at, or sort of a favorite memory of yours during time in service.
Yeah, so I've already given a clue. Anywhere the Marine Corps stationed me where there were good mountain bike trails. super, super awesome.
Is that
Uh,
you looked into that like right away as soon as you got your orders?
No, yeah, well, yeah, it was a consideration. How's that? So, Quantico, Virginia, crossroads of the Marine Corps, several assignments there or school assignments, great mountain bike trails in Quantico, just right inside the middle of the base there. Did a tour in Southern California at Camp Pendleton. We lived on base, and sure enough, right outside our door was a trail to the trail system out in the training area. And so just get out on the bike. And those that have spent some time in Southern California know the weather is always pretty nice. Never had to consider
Oh yeah.
rain. Like so, yeah, those places where we could get outside and spend time as a family, and all my family members have done biking in some form or fashion, were really good places for us.
No, I love that's an aspect. Now, is this something that's a whole family affair? Like, does Kathy get out there and kids, and when you were going out, you're like, okay, I'm gonna find the trails, or was it a lot really a solo
So I don't
extracurricular for
know
you?
how much trouble I'll be in sharing this aspect of our relationship, but it wasn't maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Kathy thought I was a little bit crazy with my mountain biking because
Mm.
I think she had images of Red Bull Rampage. If you watch some of the Red Bull mountain biking events, they're going off of ramps and flipping upside down
Oh
and
yeah,
these like 50-foot or higher cliffs. Or no, this is not the mountain biking Brian Russell does. Brian Russell gets on
extreme
again.
sport.
Remember, rubber side down, on a trail and going maybe some fast, and there's a little bit of downhill, but it's really just pretty moderate trails through the woods. That's my kind of riding. But anyway, now Kathy is a coach on our local mountain bike team here in Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Mhm.
And she works at a bike shop here in Jacksonville, North Carolina. And a recent financial decision we had to make about moving into our new house was maybe we get a new couch, because all the military veteran members will know your stuff moves every couple of years and it gets pretty beat up. So the Russell family couch is pretty beat up. So we're thinking about getting a new couch. You know what Kathy got instead, Mary Kate? A new mountain bike. So so Kathy has
Here's the
completely
budget.
turned
Oh,
in her
you
perspective.
converted her. Oh my
I think I
goodness.
did. I think I claim a victory on this one.
But
But
can I tell you though that especially I don't know if it's me my mindset as a woman. I find it's like so hard even to find a gift for the men in my family, but it seems like it's just so easy for people that love you and your family to just be like, I'm gonna get Brian and Kathy some bike stuff because it does add up, right? But I'm sure for the holidays you all got some pretty sweet new bike gear, something like that.
how did you know I got Kathy a new mountain bike flannel shirt for
What?
Christmas for the cooler temperature riding that happens in the.
Matching? Do y'all have like I'm just matching this all matching flannel?
So
Goodness.
Kathy will tell you that matching attire is very important to her mountain biking style of riding, and I'm
Of
talking jersey
course.
and socks and all that. Me, not so much. Yeah,
She takes it
the
very
flannel.
seriously, Brian. Takes it very
Yeah,
seriously. But
yeah.
I mean, and yeah, but and in all seriousness, I know we're gonna touch on it, but I love that we're weaving it throughout the episode, the great work that both you and Kathy are doing with the North Carolina Interscholastic Cycling League. Just incredible because we know it's so much more than just the biking gear, but it is a sport that everybody can participate in, no matter what your skill level, no matter what your age. And you had mentioned that you've done it throughout the Marine Corps. Was this something that you felt like you could connect with your other with fellow Marines on? Did you find that you joined with them, or sort of some of that leadership lessons that you took as an officer, or as leadership lessons for your Marines?
Well, throughout my career, certainly, whether that was a lunchtime group ride with some, my fellow peers around the office, or even right before I retired, I was the commanding officer of two Marine Expeditionary Force Information Group.
Mm,
The Marine Corps has a single Marine program. So, the Marines are in the barracks and we're trying to get some activities for them and bring them together and focus on getting outside and doing some physical activity. We would use our single Marine program funds to rent mountain bikes and bring them out on the trail for an activity for the single Marines, and found that really, really popular with the Marines. Something they hadn't done before, so we would give them a little bit of training, then we go on the trail. And so, yeah, certainly I've woven that throughout my career as either a bonding opportunity for peers or just a leadership opportunity to get, the sport of mountain biking. We'll probably talk about this more too, is just, if you haven't done it, it's a bit of a challenge, either mentally to, I've never done this before, or there are some physical challenges out on the trail. You got to climb, you got to get over an obstacle, something like that. I just think
That's
it's
it, Brian. When I see the hill, I'm like, oh, I try to do that as a bonding extracurricular activity with my better half, and there was a hill. And I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna do this hill on this bike or if I'm gonna be walking with this bike. But just getting over it is quite a feat. But on the Army side of the house, we used our leadership used to take us out on staff rides, whether it was to like a Civil War battlefield, like out at Gettysburg, or to go golfing. So I find it so important in the bonding aspect. But there's so many life lessons, I think, especially since you started as an early age in biking, just in cycling, just how much that's influenced your leadership style and connecting with your fellow Marines. So I think that's great. So with regards to trails, I think that's the first time that I've heard of somebody relating their duty stations to how good the trails are outside of base.
Quality of life is important, Mary Kate. So
Yeah, I gotta stay fit. I mean, I know the Marines like to stay fit. Physical fitness is very important, but yeah, that's a new one for me. I don't know, I'm just still envisioning like your entire family, like even grandma being out there on the bike too. But that's what I love about it. So with regards to your military career, I really want to hear, especially since you just finished off 27 years. Looking back now, do you see sort of a highlight? I'm sure it's probably hard to pin down a highlight, but is there something that sticks out to you from that time?
that's hard to pick a highlight, but I will
Mhm.
just say the blessing of military service, and I'm obviously speaking about the Marine Corps, is working with the Marines.
Mhm.
We recruit some of the best and brightest young men and women from across the nation, and they are just, it's eye-watering the sacrifice they're willing to go through. And this is, many of my generation deployed Iraq, deployed Afghanistan, and true sacrifice, Mary Kate, right? Like
Right.
true everything on the line. And that is just incredibly humbling when you work with that type of spirit, that type of individual, just willing to give it all for the person on the left, the person on the right. And just, they're brilliant. You give them a problem, and maybe the Marine bias frag, but they solve the problem. You just turn them loose and you point them in the right direction, give them some guidance, and it's just that's the blessing. That's the highlight, Mary Kate, is just working with the Marines. They will never disappoint you from a mission perspective. They're always trying to find a way to make that mission happen, and it's eye watering. So it's a blessing.
Absolutely. No, I love that you mentioned that. I had the opportunity to deploy with Marines, and it was just I mean, they're tough, but like you said, the spirit that they have, that they're, even though they fight and bicker like brothers and sisters do, they've got each other's back, and it's like no one can pick on my brother except me, that kind of thing of like, don't you dare try to, if you try to hurt one of our own, we're gonna hurt you, kind of thing. But it was something that, just to shout out, I have so many friends who are women in the Marine Corps or veterans, and they just are some of the toughest people that I know. And just the things that they have overcome, the things that they have sacrificed, and it doesn't leave them. I still see them doing that and going the extra mile, burning the midnight oil both ends. Uh, just just incredible service and sacrifice. So I can definitely see where that's a highlight, that it's about the people. And I can see that now as a testament to what you're doing, even hanging up the uniform. You haven't stopped that. You're still surrounding yourself with people who are giving more than themselves and continuing to devote that time. So I wanted to touch now on your transition, since you're in it right now. And and just, if you were to talk, I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to some Marines since you hung up the uniform. I know we just coming out of the holidays, but if you were to talk to a room full of Marines now, or transitioning service members, what sort of advice would you share with them?
Oh, that's a great question. I've got three main things on my mind, because I just went through that, and I think the
Right.
first is own your transition. approach it like any other mission the Marine Corps has given you or the service has given you. And what I mean by that is we are doing probably the best job I've seen in 27 years of helping service members transition to civilian life. There are some phenomenal resources, phenomenal programs that are available to help with the transition, but it is still a big organization. It is still a big machine and is not going to tailor itself for your individual needs. So you have to own it and follow, make the process work for you, I guess is the way I'm saying it. Everyone has an individual desire, background, whatever it is. System is good. Process is good. Like I said, some of the best I've seen in my 27 years, but you got to make sure you are taking care of yourself through transition. Approach it like any other mission. The second one would be seek out and listen to people who have gone through transition. Read, talk. A very good friend of mine, long-term mentor, Hank Brown, literally wrote a book on his transition process. I read it. It was a lot of good advice on there and what to expect, both from the how to get through the process, but even the emotional, what's going to be different as you transition out. Another long-term mentor of mine, Mike Grice, wrote a book on it called Orders to Nowhere. It's kind of funny, like your last set of orders in the Marine Corps to
I
not
like
any
that.
Marine Corps.
Let's keep more puns coming.
Orders to Nowhere. But yeah, Mike Grice writes it with a little bit of humor, and it's a very good read. But anyway, I would say like seek out those folks that have gone through transition and listen to them. Take everything on board that they have to say. And then I think the third is a lot of service members will be looking for another job per se. I would reframe that and try and look for your next purpose. Because I think that's part of the veteran transition challenge is we are so purposeful in the Marine Corps. You have a very noble mission, and we talked about working with folks that are sacrificing on your behalf, and you're sacrificing. It's so purposeful in what we do. It's more than just getting a job that pays the bills, and that's still important. There are still needs to be met, but finding a purpose. Those veterans that find that purpose on the other side, I think, do better than the ones that just find the first available thing. And so I just, advise service members, if you're think early, look for purpose, vice just the job, so to speak.
That's great advice. So I've got own your transition and then seek out others, perhaps who've been there, done that, but who can help take you to that next step. And then find your purpose. I think those are three really great highlights for me, who I've been out over a year now off of active duty, and I still feel like I'm transitioning. So some people say that the transitioning doesn't stop. So, and I'll add, I think being kind to yourself, right? I think there's a lot of pressure in having it all figured out, right? When we hang up our uniform, like you said, being able to find that purpose, and it doesn't have to be your paid job, right? But I think even as we're about to get into with your nonprofit, that there's ways of volunteering and giving back and finding that purpose again without it being your paid position. So there's definitely great ways to find your next mission and your next purpose.
Well, that's a great point, Mary Kate. That's what led that's the basis of our relationship, right? I was seeking out mentorship. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing in the nonprofit space. That's foreign to a 27-year Marine. So I'm willing to listen to everything you have to tell me about the nonprofit space.
Can I touch on that part too? Is that because I think our first conversation, and I know our listeners are like, what are they talking about? But Brian and I met through American Corp Partners, incredible nonprofit out there, free to service members and their families with regards to mentorship. And looking towards you, Brian, I'm like, you're a 27-year Marine. You got to figure it out. What in the world can I possibly mentor you on? But I think it's just humbling on both ends. You're just, we found that commonality with like where I'm living at now, and just our love and our purpose as far as giving back to others and surrounding ourselves with people who can just help us get to that next step. It's that continuous act of learning, right? I just love being active learners. And so I think just that alone about how we met is a testament to that.
That's so true. And so let me, inject just over those 27 years of experience, you get some pretty cool opportunities. One of which was being certified as a level 1 CrossFit instructor. That
Mm-hmm.
opportunity came to me out at Fort Leavenworth at the Army's Command and General Staff College. The Marine colonel in charge of us out there was a big CrossFit guy, convinced the Army to pay for a level 1 certification for 60 majors in the class. So he's like, hey, Russell, you want to be a level 1 CrossFit coach? Like, you're paying for it? Yes, sir. Like, sign me
Sure,
up.
let's do
So,
it.
this is 2008, had heard of CrossFit, didn't really know it. So I went through level 1 cert and kind of became hooked on the CrossFit methodology, just in terms of the variance of training, working across all domains of fitness. That is really the most fit person, is one that can demonstrate, competence, if not mastery, across all of those domains. And boy, that was really powerful to me. But here's the one thing that I think this came from Greg Glassman, their founder, is you fail at the limits of your experience.
Mm.
And so and he said, like, he I think he founded CrossFit on this notion that ultra marathoners were being billed as the fittest people on earth. Well, they're very good at that domain, but can they bench any amount of weight? Maybe
Mm.
not. So he always said that with CrossFit, we're going to make you very broad and capable across broad range of activities. But if you want to really master something in a domain, you have to practice in that domain. You have to get out and run 26 plus miles to be a marathoner. So again, you fail at the limits of your experience. So just, stepping into my transition is like, I have no experience running a nonprofit. So who might have some experience that I can leverage?
And I love that. And it's super humbling. I think, and I just even learning that from you, because I think even in my transition, I lacked that confidence to seek out, to be like, who's going to actually, to put myself out there as a mentor. Because I remember when my dear friend Leslie Coffey, who's with American Court Partners, she was like, when she signed up to be a mentor, and I was like, do I have that experience? And so it's just been really very rewarding for me to be able to share that knowledge. And you're continuing to do that now with our listeners. And I just really want to take this time as well to talk about the North Carolina Interscholastic Cycling League, because I know it's part of a wider nationwide league. But I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about the organization and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, would love to. And let me start with a story about my first involvement with this mountain biking organization. It is the
I'd love that.
National Interscholastic Cycling Association. It's a national organization. The mission, Mary Kate, is building strong minds, strong bodies, and strong character through mountain biking. We just use two wheels to do all of those things for middle school and high school students across the nation. So there's multiple state leagues. I am the director of the North Carolina League, and I'll talk more about that. But just think about that, youth development, youth character, you like, yes, sign me up right away to do that. But here's why. Here's why I jumped at this opportunity. I first got associated with this organization in Maryland. We were assigned up there. 2018, Maryland decided to start their state league, and I helped form a team there. I became the head coach in the second season, and I just saw the impact the sport had on these young student athletes, from the confidence building. We got reports they started doing better in school. We saw it bring families together. This is, with this sport of mountain biking, the hashtag for the National League is more kids on bikes, which is absolutely true. That's our goal. Let's get more kids on bikes, turn them into lifelong mountain bike enthusiasts, but really outdoor enthusiasts, and being part of a community that just appreciates the outdoors. That's the strategic vision. But really, my hashtags is hashtag no bench. Every kid that signs up gets to ride their bike. Every kid, if they want to, they can race. There's no bench. Like, everyone participates. And my second hashtag is hashtag more families on bikes. Because this is really, think about this, Mary Kay. What other sport are you aware of where you as a parent can get on the field with your kid and participate? So with a little bit of training, you can become a coach for the team, and you're out there with your kid on the trail during practice. That's
I love
pretty
that.
cool. And so
Very.
that was, we say in NICA, what's your why? Again,
Mm-hmm.
remember purpose. What's your why? Initially, my why was just being more involved with my son. Again, military service, spending a lot of time away. I want to spend time with my second son, Ian, who was our mountain biker. And I get to be right there with him and spend all that time. on the bike with Ian. That's what brought me into the Maryland League. And so, 2020 get a set of orders down here to North Carolina, and 2020 was the year of COVID. That wasn't a fun PCS move for us, Mary Kate. That was
No.
fraught with challenge for Team Russell. And here, let me describe this. My son was a senior in high school in Maryland. No graduation, no prom for him, no traditional rite of passage. My daughter, who was we spent 5 years in Maryland, no going away parties, no seeing her friends before we left Maryland. So it was pretty rough. But the silver lining is when we got here to North Carolina, there was a NICA team. There was a mountain bike team. Mary Kate, literally the first thing we did the very next day we moved down here, I was out on a mountain bike trail with my two boys, with a family that was on the local mountain bike team here, engaging with the community immediately. Immediate familiarity with an activity, immediate familiarity with quote unquote rules or how we do it. And so we fell in on that team, and it was like a virtual hug, Mary Kate, from that team to my family, to help us work through all of the dynamics of what was a crazy year for everybody. Well, this league, this sport helped reduce some of the crazy for my family. So when the opportunity came several months ago, the director position for the North Carolina League, we've got 64 teams right now for our 2023 season, 800 registered student athletes, over 400 coaches, again, over 400 parents out there spending time with their kids,
I love that.
Local community. And I said, oh, again, back to the transition point, find some purpose, mission-oriented, service-oriented. I've spent 27 years helping develop, if you will, young men and women with one mission in mind. I'll spend my next set of however many years developing character and competency and strong mind, strong body in the youth of North Carolina. Sounds like
I love that. Can you touch on that? What's that hashtag? What's that?
Hashtag dream job.
Dream job. Yeah, hashtag dream job. Found your purpose, next mission. And I love that it's a family affair, a whole family event. I would love to hear you mentioned about what your kids went through during the pandemic, and I think there's a lot of similar stories probably from our listeners about how their families coped with COVID-19 and that quarantine and isolation and things being shut down and not having trying to that post new normal. I know some people hate that term, but this new normal that we are living in now. I know with mountain biking, it's so much more than the physical aspect. And you had just touched on it real quickly about the mind and just that family, that virtual hug that you all were able to get, even from folks that you may not know that well, but you had that instant connection. Can you talk a little bit more about what your organization does as far as helping with mental health and confidence and things like that?
Well, I think it gets to the core values of the league. So let me share those with you. And fun is up there, so people want to participate. Inclusivity, I already talked about that. It's like everyone gets the ride. It doesn't matter your background, gender, race. That doesn't matter. Even ability level, we'll train you. Equity, everyone gets a fair shot at participating in there. And then the last two, respect and community. And so that's what you experience when you come to one of our teams. It's not all about the racing, but here's where the character development comes in, and the strong mind and the strong body. Is mountain biking, like we shared, can be a challenge, but you set your own challenge, right? The student athlete that comes to that first practice never having ridden a mountain bike, the challenge might just be to get on the bike and be able to stop. And you just continue to build the skills, and we're not even talking about racing. Another student athlete, been there a year or two, just wants to complete a race for the first time. Great.
Right.
Awesome. Set that as a goal. We'll just keep tracking you. And I think this is something about the mountain bike community writ large that I've noticed throughout my time with it. Everyone just wants you to have a good ride. That's my description of the mountain bike community. You're out on a trail, you get a flat, like the next mountain biker is typically going to stop and try and help you get back on your bike. Everyone just wants you to have a good ride. And so that's the culture we're creating here in this league, where you join, and whatever that challenge is in your life, you're going to find a coach, a parent, someone that's going to help you through that challenge. It may not be related to mountain biking, but they're going to know that you care about them.
No, I love that. And again, caring about people like you did, you spent 27 years caring for Marines, and now you're doing it further with all ages, people from all walks of life. And I love that the bikes can be adapted to, regardless if they're an amputee or they have an injury, or depending on their skill level or age, that there's, those bikes can be adapted to something that suits them and custom made. It's not this cookie cutter. And like you said, nobody gets benched. So I love that aspect. Could you touch on maybe taking this opportunity to highlight a success story where one of your riders it really perhaps changed their life or impacted them in a significant way?
I think beyond just an individual rider, I'll talk about maybe a demographic that maybe when you say mountain biking isn't immediately thought of, and that's our female student athletes. We have a
Mm,
specific program called Girls Riding Together. And oh, hey,
love
check this
that.
out. Cool acronym, GRIT. Girls Riding Together, right?
It's like mine.
Uh,
Yep.
yeah, so it's a program dedicated to making sure we focus on that core value of inclusivity. You can imagine, as maybe a female student athlete, you're the one girl on that team, and
Mm,
so build programs to help bring them into the sport and into the community, make sure they feel supported. And pretty proud of the fact that we're upwards of 22% female student athletes in this league in North Carolina, which is pretty impressive, having
love
started
that.
a lot lower than that. And our goal nationally, I think, is 30%. But really, it's we invited one of our senior female student athletes to our league summit a couple months ago. So we brought coaches, team directors from across the state in. Like, what are we doing? What do we need to do better? And we closed with a student athlete panel. And Amelia, our one female student athlete, I think she had the mic drop moment. And this is what we're doing with our grit program, and is that she says not all riders want to race, but all riders want to belong. And that's why she's still in the league. It's not the racing, it's the program that supported her being part of this community. And so that's, I think, one of our success stories, Mary Kate, is just we're
Absolutely.
focused on a demographic that sometimes isn't the first thing you think about when you say mountain biking. They feel a little marginalized, small numbers coming onto a team. We're trying to counter that and just make this an all-inclusive family and community sport for everybody.
Well, I love that. And then with you at the helm as director, I'm excited to see what's to come for your organization with regards to getting, maybe eliminating that margin there, and just getting more of those girls, young women to feel inspired and get on a bike. So again, I love that too. And I think there's just so much to say that when they're part of that race, that level of achievement and that feeling once they do cross the line. I before I forget the thought had slipped my mind earlier, but how how young were you when you first started riding a bike? What's your earliest
Um,
memory, I should say, of you on a bike?
Probably like the one that seared into my mind, again, rubber side down is always best, is probably riding my Huffy BMX bike. And I can't remember how old I was, but in elementary school, off the homemade ramp one of my friends had built, and then
Oh
completely
gosh.
face planting in the asphalt and just, you know, road rash across half of my face. You can imagine why I still remember that to this
Yeah, that's
day.
like straight out of a movie. Like one of my earliest memories with the bike myself was my parents bought me a bike that was it was actually an adult bike. And I think that they were just like, oh, you're gonna grow into it. And instead of buying a bike as you get older, we'll just get you a big one. So I literally had to fall off the bike just to like get off of it. And I remember my pedals actually falling off one time, and as I was going downhill. So I can relate to the crash and burn that you experienced. But again, I just love the lessons learned and the confidence, the self-esteem building, the teamwork, and that everybody can take part and be part of the race. Just great analogy and parallels there with just life in general, right? And just giving everybody that opportunity to grow and be on that pathway, on that path. So I know we're nearing the end of our time together, but I wanted to hear from you if you how folks can connect with you, with your organization. How can they reach out and get involved and volunteer?
Yeah, and boy, we'd be happy to have anybody support to get hashtag more kids on bikes. But website is probably the best, northcarolinamtb.org. You can find information about all of our programs. I mentioned just the one, the Girls Riding Together. We have another program we're reinvigorating this year called Teen Trail Corps. None of this mountain biking happens without trail systems. And so since 2023 is the North Carolina Year of the Trail, we're encouraging our team, student athletes, coaches to get out there and help fix up the trails. Be good stewards of the environment. And so that Teen Trail Corps is a program where we incentivize both the student athletes and the coaches putting in some hours to fixing up the trails out there. But you can see on our website opportunities to volunteer at our race events. We're a spring league, so we will race 6 times, March through May. Love to have you out. Come check us out. But yeah, you just can't kind of find that same type of vibe anywhere else that I've found in a youth sports organization. Team set up in what we call the pit zone. They're maybe decorating their tents, and families coming together, preparing for the race, and then just seeing the smiles across the finish line, Mary Kate, or like the resiliency. You talk about true grit. I've seen this in both leagues now. Poor kids' bike breaks half a mile from the finish line. You know what most of our kids do? They pick up that bike and they run it across the finish line. And just
with big smiles, right? Big smiles on their
big
faces.
smiles, or just that determination, and again, just everyone cheering for all of them out there. It's a wonderful venue. So yeah, if you want to volunteer for that, there's a volunteer link on our website. You can come out and help us with parking or the course marketing. It's plenty of opportunities to support the league. So would love to get in touch with folks if they want to reach out to me.
Yes, that's great. And just because I know you're so humble, but as far as financial support, you can also, I'm sure our listeners can also donate through the same website, correct?
Right next to the volunteer link is the donation link. Yes, Mary Kate.
Yes,
Plenty of opportunities.
Yes, for financial support to help this great organization, the North Carolina Interscholastic Cycling League. And I love, again, that it's the whole family affair. So if you're looking for opportunities to support.
Yeah, and I'll share a little bit about that too. Like more kids on bikes. We're trying to reach everybody and give them an opportunity in North Carolina to get on a bike. So just this season, this league has awarded over $4,000 in scholarships, and a scholarship pays for registration fees and the like for families that are having some financial difficulty or a certain demographic. We have a loaner bike program, so we purchase bikes, and if that kid can't get access to a bike for that season, we will loan a bike. Just to be able to get them out there. So yeah, the financial support is very important as well. But I just want to share what we're using it for, Mary Kate, is really it's getting more kids on bikes.
No, and I think that's such an important note. I know this is especially coming out of the holiday season, it's a really hard time for a lot of folks, and even coming out of the pandemic. So again, for financial support, the fact that you're able to provide that service for these kids is incredible. So, and again, on LinkedIn, you're also out there on LinkedIn. So Brian Russel, that's Russell. So you connect with Brian there. Any final thoughts, Brian, before we close us out here?
No, I just want to thank you for what you're doing, Mary Kate, with the podcast, with your mentorship. What a wonderful thing you're doing, just helping these veterans through their transition. This helps me, right? I get to talk about what I'm up to and what I'm doing. I mean, there's an aspect of that, Mary Kate. So I really appreciate what you're doing for the veterans.
And I thank you again for your 27 years of service and your continued service beyond the uniform. That's what Veteran Voices and why I love doing what I do, to be able to amplify your efforts. And I know we're kind of like side chuckling with our listeners. My nonprofit's the Guam Human Rights Initiative. And so when you add the T in there for our team, we're also GRIT. So every time Brian's saying GRIT, we're sort of like private chuckling back over here, but there's a reason for that. And I just love, got grit. So on behalf of the entire team here at Veteran Voices, we invite you to find us and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. A big thanks to our partners at Military Women's Collective at militarywomen'scollective.org and the Guam Human Rights Initiative at guamhri.org. Two great, incredible organizations. You can find more about them there. Again, don't forget to check out North Carolina Interscholastic Cycling League. I will get it one of these days. Brian, I'm so sorry. But could you say, Brian, real quick, the website again?
North Carolina MTB, all one word, .org.
North Carolina MTB.org. Check out, learn more there. Thank you again so much for joining us. Ryan. This is Mary Kate Soliva wishing all of our listeners nothing but the best. So do good, give forward, and be the change that's needed. On that note, we'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody.